Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at Intellectual Chocolate, where we have intelligent conversations with brilliant Black minds. I'm Rashida, your host, and I'm here today with attorney Lance Venable. He is a intellectual property attorney, and he covers patent, copyright, and trademark law. So, Lance, I would like to say thank you for joining us today.
No, it's my pleasure, Rashida. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So, please tell us a little bit about yourself. We know that you are an intellectual property attorney.
Yes.
And we're going to get more into that, but I always like to start with getting people's background. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. How far back would you like me to go? I can start with my where I grew up.
You know what? You have an interesting story, so I want you to start at the beginning. Tell us about where you grew up.
So I grew up. I was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. I grew up in the what's referred to as the Auburn Gresham neighborhood of South Chicago. If any of you have ever heard of Father Michael Flager, he's an activist on the south side of Chicago. We attended the same high school.
Okay.
And we're from the same, and that St. Sabina's where he's the pastor, that's my neighborhood. So if anybody kind of needs to know the general area, that's where I grew up. It's interesting because my racial background is I'm half Black, I'm half white. My father, who passed away 25 years ago, he was born and raised in Detroit, and his background. He was an avid music lover, jazz, R&B. He knew many of the people that were active in Motown, so I got to know. That's how my music taste developed. When I was living in Chicago, it was kind of funny. When I first moved into the neighborhood where I grew up in, the neighborhood was about half white, half Black, and within a couple of years in the early 70s, the neighborhood had become a completely Black neighborhood. There was white flight. People left the neighborhood. And so it was kind of interesting because I'm a light-skinned person, obviously, and it was quite interesting being probably the lightest person in the neighborhood by the time I was about 7 or 8 years old. And I was also educated in schools that also were predominantly Black until I went to high school. And so, culturally, when it comes to music, when it comes to growing up in a neighborhood full of very nice families who always looked out for you and took care of you. It was something that really, I think, helped me as a young kid growing up, and I always think of that it shaped my viewpoints of kind of what's important in life. And it's kind of unique because, growing up, I was in many situations where, you'd be in a room full of people who didn't necessarily look like you. And then, they would say things that, like, they might say some racist things. And it's like, oh, until they find out, like, who my father was, right?
Right.
And it became, that was always sort of something that just sort of bothered me because I was like, this is what people talk about when they kind of assume, who you are. And when they find out who you are and they treat you differently, it was just kind of interesting. But anyway, that sort of defined, I think, who I was as a person growing up. But I always had this interest in math and science and even law to a certain extent. I used to watch old Perry Mason movies and Perry Mason show, and L.A. Law was a show that I loved to watch when I was growing up. So it kind of shaped what my interests were. And I went to high school in the same neighborhood. And when I graduated high school, I wanted to go somewhere to college away from Chicago. I wanted to go try something different.
Okay.
And I decided to attend Arizona State University in Tempe here in Arizona, which is where I live now. I actually live in Chandler now. I've lived here. When I attended school at ASU, I got my Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering in 1991. And then I worked at Motorola as an engineer for almost 2 years after I graduated. And then I attended law school. I decided to go back and attend law school because it was always an interest of mine.
Okay,
And,
so how did you choose intellectual property law?
well, it's kind of interesting. You know, when I was an engineer, uh, you know, I always thought like, well, what is it that you could possibly do if you went to law school? I mean, all the lawyers that I knew, you know, people on TV, they were either prosecutors, criminal defense lawyers, or the kind of
Right.
lawyers that you see on the, you know, the 1 o'clock, you know, commercials about, you know, if you've been in an accident, call me, you know, that kind of stuff. And I never really thought too much about what I could do if I went to law school. And then a good friend of mine, who was actually a pre-law major in undergrad, told me, he said, you know, you really ought to think about doing it because you could become an intellectual property attorney and you could use your engineering background, your science background to go into to patent law,
Right.
which for those who don't know, deals with the federal laws that govern the protection of people's inventions, new ideas that they come up with about how to make something better. You know, like the old adage to build a better mousetrap. If you have a better mousetrap that you've come up with and you want to protect that invention, then you would call someone like me to try to help them, help you get a patent that would allow you to be the only person in the country who can make, use, or sell that invention. And that provides a lot of value for somebody who has those rights, because
Right.
essentially you don't have any competition. And if you're able to have a product that you're the only one that can sell it, people have to build a path to you if they are interested in buying it.
Right. Right.
So,
Right.
you know, not all inventions and not all patents are for good inventions that people are in demand for. But if you have something that really is worth doing, and it's something you think that people would want to buy, you'd want to protect it, and you'd want to give someone like me a call.
Okay, cool, cool. So we're going to talk more about what you actually do, but I think that you have a very interesting story, and you kind of started there. You kind of started with, your upbringing and being a Black man yourself, but could easily be mistaken for
Yeah.
another ethnicity.
Yes.
And you've had some experiences that in life that caused you to want to do more in your community.
Yes.
So can you speak to some of those experiences?
Yes. So, you know, growing up, in Chicago, most of the people that I grew up with in my neighborhood, during the 70s, early 80s, we were all really good people, good friends, good families. But, not a lot of them ended up going off to college. Most of them did graduate high school, but not a lot of them went off to college. I was the first one in my family, in fact, to ever go off to college. In fact, I was probably the first one in my immediate family to graduate high school.
Okay.
And so, I always wanted to have something better than, and my parents encouraged that. They wanted, me to try to do something better for myself. And, the couple of friends of mine who did go off to college, they went for a couple of years, but they never finished. And, I got to see firsthand, where that left them, several years later when they needed to, establish a career. And, not college is not for everyone. I understand that. But I also realized that, I started thinking about, what was going to make things better for people in my community. And, I got to thinking, you can always go work for someone, and that's one way to build wealth. But most of the time you end up getting stuck in a job that pays very little or not a lot, and you're working for someone else. And so many of my friends say, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to go off on my own and try to figure out a way to make some money. And you realize over time a lot of it just becomes, they're just dreams, and they're never really pursued. I wanted to, I always wanted to, in the back of my mind, I always thought about trying to start a business and be an engineer when I was still thinking about, being an engineer in high school and then when I was in college, that I wanted to go, try to do more than just end up working for someone else.
Okay.
But I never really thought about how I was going to do that until much later.
Okay.
But when I went to college, I just got to see as a person who was studying electrical engineering. I looked around in my classrooms out here at ASU, and there weren't a lot of people that looked like us in the classrooms.
Okay.
And that's not just Black people. That was other minorities as well. There was, Latinos. There were not a lot of Native Americans. I mean, there's a large Native American population in the state of Arizona. Very, very small number in engineering. All the people who were in college were majoring in business, and they were majoring in psychology, but none of them who were from my neighborhood or neighborhoods like mine were studying engineering. And I always thought that, one of the ways that you can instantly get into a career that would allow you to make good money and do something hopefully that would be interesting is something related to science and technology and engineering.
Right.
So I wanted to, early on in my career, to try to help other people who were from neighborhoods like mine, to try to, steer them into tech careers, because because I always thought about, like, why don't we have in our community someone like a Bill Gates, like a Jeff Bezos, or I'm sorry, the Apple Computer guy, the owner of Apple Computer,
Amazon and Steve Jobs. Yes.
Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs. Like these are great success stories. And I wanted to, we didn't have anybody in that arena who had, who you could put a face on and say, here's somebody in the community who, has done what would be considered a non-traditional career in technology and in science and in engineering, and, developed like the next iPhone, developed the next Microsoft, because I thought
something that just becomes global.
Right.
I want to take a moment real quick and let the audience know, for those of you who may just be tuning in, I'm speaking with Lance Venable. He is an intellectual property attorney, and he's here discussing how you can how you can protect your intellectual property to make a lot of money for yourself and for your community. And I'm Rashida, your host here on Intellectual Chocolate, where we have intelligent conversations with brilliant Black minds, and also for financial literacy and to learn how to grow your business. Today, we invite you to visit the Black Business School, and also subscribe to the Intellectual Chocolate podcast online at intellectualchocolate.com. Okay, so I want us to tie in your desire to see that tech person in our community and talk about how protecting intellectual property early on, it could be valuable, and why it's so important.
Well, one of the things that I learned when I was in my latter years in engineering, before I finished my degree, was that I saw a lot of these great ideas, these inventions, when I was working at Motorola. Even like these people who worked there, they were working on all these great things, and I always thought about, like, why, wouldn't it be great to have somebody who came from somewhere like my neighborhood, who was an engineer at Motorola or Intel or somewhere like that, to leave that company and to go off on their own and start their own company.
Right.
And that was sort of instrumental in having me wanting to attend law school, because I also realized, after I mentioned earlier, where my friend had suggested he wanted me to go to, I should go to law school to help, do patent law, that part of protecting the wealth that you can create from starting your own business in the tech industry is you have to be able to protect it through the intellectual property laws.
Okay.
And I know, I don't want to assume that anybody understands, what the difference between, well, what's intellectual property? What does that really mean? I like to analogize it between, like, if you are interested in owning a home, you
Okay.
you go to the bank, you get a mortgage to pay for a home, piece of property, you know, the house on the property, and that is a tangible piece of property that you own. It has value. It has value depending upon what people are willing to pay for that home. So
Yes.
if you own it, you pay off the home over a number of years, you end up with a deed to a property that has, you know, potentially, you know, a good amount of value to it. Well, intellectual property is sort of it's the technology analogy, which is that if you have an idea and you want to protect it, the idea itself is not something that's tangible like a piece of real property.
Right.
It's something that you can't touch, you can't feel. I mean, you can see the invention, but you don't see the rights that are created as a result. The value of that property is in the ability to be able to have control over it and to be able to sell lots of those, you know, products. So, for instance, the iPhone. You know, Steve Jobs, I'm sure, has great patent attorneys on his staff. Had patent, well, he's not there anymore, obviously, but like the Apple computer, when he came up with the iPhone, you know, all they do all day is they spend, significant amount of their time determining what parts of that iPhone are protectable that haven't been done before. And their patent attorneys are filing patent applications to give Apple Computer the sole rights to protect that right for Apple to be able to make, use, or sell that invention. So when people want to buy the iPhone, they have to go, they have to go to Apple to get it. There aren't other, you can have another type of phone, but you can't have an Apple iPhone.
Right.
And the patent is essentially a deed to that piece of property. And there is tremendous amount of there's a tremendous amount of value and the ability to create wealth from protecting intellectual property, such as, you know, the iPhone.
So you're essentially protecting your ideas.
Yes, the embodiment of your ideas.
The embodiment.
A lot of people have ideas, they just don't know. Like you say, well, I have an idea about how to get to the moon, but until you actually figure out a way to do it, it's just an idea. It's the
embodiment of that idea. I love that.
And it's not just inventions. It's also music. It's also art. It's also the content of a book is a piece of intellectual property. You know, the ability to stop somebody from copying a book without paying you for the royalty or the cost of that book. This video that we're making
and that falls under copyright, right?
Yes, that falls under copyright law. This conversation we're having right now is being recorded. I'm sure that Intellectual Chocolate owns the rights to, or the copyright to this video.
Right.
If somebody was going to make unauthorized copies of it, you would call me and say, Lance, we got to stop someone from making these copies and without our permission.
Right.
And there's also what's called trademark law, which I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with. They probably just didn't know they were familiar with it. And that's those are the names and the logos and the identifiers that are used to associate a business with the product that they're selling or the service that they're offering.
Which often is referred to as a brand, right?
A brand, yes. It's a brand is really in its most simplistic form. It's an identifier of source. So that you see the brand, you associate it either with a particular person or a company and a particular quality that's associated with that particular person or the product.
Right.
I think we had talked about this at some point. I always like to use the Coming to America.
Yes, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, if any of you, I'm sure a lot of people have seen the movie Coming to America, where John Amos plays the owner of McDowell's restaurant. And it's basically a very, very bad infringement of McDonald's trademark. where he says, well, I'm not infringing the person's trademark. I'm using the golden arcs, not the golden arches.
And they're McDonald's. I'm McDowell's.
That's right. You know, my buns don't have sesame seeds. You know,
right.
that kind of thing.
I think you can tell you and I have watched the movie a couple times.
I've watched it quite a bit. Yes. And so, you know, that's the idea, is that, you know, the value of McDonald's trademark, the worldwide value of that is so powerful, because when you are riding down the highway and you see off the highway, you know, a big set of golden arches in the foreground, you know that that's a McDonald's restaurant. You know the type of food that they serve in there. You generally expect that the same type of hamburger that you buy in that place, it will taste the same no matter where you go. And all of that is protectable under the trademark laws. And that allows, you know, McDonald's to be able to invest time, money, and effort into the reputation and the brand that they have. All of these things are important to people who start businesses, not just inventors. And I think that's, you know, kind of what I hope to do with what I do as a lawyer, is I try to help people build wealth and build brands, protect inventions, protect their copyrights. And these are things that are not traditionally done by a lot of businesses that are owned in our community.
In our community, yes.
I've been practicing for 23 years, and I've accumulated over that time nearly 1,700 clients in that time period. They're not all still current clients, but only a very small number of those, you know, were either Black-owned businesses, individual inventors, or you know, small businesses that took advantage of protecting their intellectual property. And but I will say that those that did, I every once in a while I'll hear from someone, you know, thank you, I'm so appreciative of the fact that we got a trademark registration, because somebody tried to copy my trademark and it would have cost me, you know, thousands of dollars, and that registration helped stop that infringement from happening.
Wow.
So
it saved them some money.
Yes, saved them, not only saved them money, but actually helped build the value of their business because they protected their trademarks. So that's something that I'm hopeful. What intrigues me about what you do and what Dr. Watkins,
Dr. Boyce is doing, yes.
That we have to get the word out that this is something that you know, traditionally we probably haven't given much thought to, but it's something that we really need to take advantage of. And you know, if it's not me, you should go talk to somebody to talk.
So 1 second, if you're just tuning in, I'm speaking with attorney Lance Venable, and he is an intellectual property attorney, which covers trademark, patents, and copyrights. And you're here on Intellectual Chocolate. I'm Rashida, your host, and I want you to make sure to subscribe to the podcast at intellectualchocolate.com. And also for financial literacy and to learn how to grow your business today, we want you to visit the blackbusinessschool.com. So you also, we talked about the McDonald's analogy or example that we can give from Coming to America that a lot of people in our community are familiar with if they're familiar with the movie. But you also, in your own experience, you had a case that was a pretty popular case for online, I don't even know what it's consideed. War of Warcraft. What is that?
It's World of Warcraft.
Yes. Worlds of Warcraft.
So,
yes.
I am quite sure that I know that the popular game today is Fortnite. That's the one that a lot of people play, my son included.
Mine also.
Well, probably, and I know this is still the case. I know a lot of people still play this game, but about 10 years ago, probably the most popular game ever created was called World of Warcraft. It was made and published by Blizzard Entertainment. They're a company they make several other types of games, but World of Warcraft was one of the most popular games ever created. And the general idea of it is that you create a character and you have to spend a significant amount of time in this virtual world where the character, you know, you can get it to do a lot of things, fight monsters, you know, you join these what are called guilds to fight other guilds to try to get, I guess it would be considered gold, wealth in the game. And but the way that Blizzard's business model is in this game is that you have to play this game a significant amount of time in order to level your character up to the point where you get to do some really interesting things within the game.
Okay.
And I had never heard of the game before October 25th, 2006. I remember that day well.
Okay.
And I had received a call from a client that, or a guy that became my client, and he had told me that he had received a complaint from Blizzard Entertainment because he was a software developer, and he had created a software program that helped him. It allowed his character to play the game even when he was not sitting at the computer. These types of programs are otherwise referred to as bots. A lot of people probably know what they are now today, but they basically just allow you to play the game. And what that allowed my client to do was it allowed him to build up his level in the game in a matter of weeks, where a normal person would have taken up to a year, maybe even, 17, 18, 19, 20 months to get to the same.
So they didn't get to the good stuff in the game until they defeated all of these levels or passed or accomplished all of these levels.
Right. And so he created this software, and a friend of his, he did it to try to help him move up in the game because he had friends that were at a higher level than he was.
Okay.
And then he developed this program and decided to sell it to see if anybody would be interested in buying it, and it became extremely popular. He was selling quite a bit, quite a number of these licenses to his software, and it made a lot of money for him. And this is just to further educate the people who are listening about how valuable computer software can be when someone just comes up with an idea like this. It made him tens of thousands of dollars, in fact, hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of the time that he was selling his program. And so Blizzard got wind of this, and they basically...
now, can I ask you this one question? Yeah. Did he do his trademarking and protect his intellectual property up front?
No, he didn't actually. He did. Okay. He did once he talked to me.
Okay. Okay. So.
But he did protect his trademarks. We got those taken care of for him, and his copyrights were protected in the program. There really wasn't anything patentable that he had, but we did. I mean, that was what we did. We tried to help him protect those rights. And so Blizzard's terms of use, when you sign up for the game, it's expressly stated in these terms of use that they don't want people doing things like this. They don't want you to have these bot programs because their business model is built on you staying a long time and playing the game. You pay I think it used to be you paid $15 a month to be able to play the game. So they don't want you to like get to this level and then decide, oh, I'm there now. I don't have to, I don't have to pay anymore. I can just quit the game.
Gotcha.
And so he got sued over this, and he was basically accused of violating U.S. copyright law, interfering with the contracts that Blizzard had with the people that used the program and his software because it violated the terms of use. And also there was this new law that was passed back in 1998 called the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. And what my client did was, in order to avoid being detected by Blizzard, because they could, they have these very intelligent software engineers who could detect people who were using bots.
Right.
He used these mechanisms in his software to hide the presence of his program in the game. So
he was a pretty bright person.
This gentleman is one of the smartest guys I've ever met in my life, and definitely one of the best software coders I've ever met.
Okay.
And so the DMCA, as it's referred to, is there to stop people from hiding, like putting in these measures to try to hide and circumvent these protection schemes. And the DMCA was originally put in to try to stop people from making unauthorized copies of DVDs and then putting them up online, or because they have like they're encoded, and then people would like decrypt them and then put them up on the web, and then you could get movies for free without having to pay for them, and that's what it was originally designed for. So they accused him of doing the same thing.
Okay.
And we ended up representing him in this case. The case lasted almost 6 years, and you got to understand, Blizzard is a multi-billion-dollar company.
Right.
And my client was just my client. It was just him and a couple of guys who worked in a small office. But he was resolute, and he wanted to fight this, and he did. And we took it to trial. We lost at trial on all but one issue, but we decided to appeal the case to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And this is basically like the Supreme Court. It acts as like the Supreme Court of cases involving intellectual property cases. You can actually take some cases up to the real Supreme Court, but the Court of Appeals, that's it. Most cases never get to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
And we did this, and we got all of the issues that we had lost on at trial reversed.
Oh,
wow. Except for one. And we ended up settling on the final issue, and the case lasted 6 years. But if you were to Google my name and Google World of Warcraft, there's just so much stuff that came up on this case, and it got a lot of attention. It was probably, I never expected that day that my client called me that I would end up being involved in this case that was literally a case of a lifetime. And his story, though, just to tie it all together, his story really is, though, about how when it comes to science, technology, engineering, the thing that he was able to do was just by creating a single program, single software program, he was able to license that to literally tens and tens of thousands of people without having to build a big warehouse, a manufacturing plant, all those things that you would traditionally think about, like someone like Ford Motor Company would have to do in order to create wealth. He did this literally from his computer. And these are the types of things that, like I said, I believe traditionally in our community, we don't have a lot of those types of success stories. And I'm hopeful that with what I do, and maybe through some exposure here, that it sort of shines a light on the opportunities that people have. Study software coding, go get a science or engineering degree. Go work for companies where you can learn how to do these types of things, because there's good paying jobs and there's a lot of wealth that is to be created. And then once you create it, you protect it by giving.
Yeah, and to your point, some of the biggest companies that have been created over the last 20 years, have been companies in the internet space, something where software development, all of those sort of things.
Well, so, 15 years ago, we never heard of Amazon. We never heard of Facebook. Apple Computer was Apple Computer, but what's taken Apple Computer into the stratosphere is the iPhone,
the iPad, and now that's probably obsolete with the iPhone. But yeah,
right. But all of these things, Twitter. All these, social media platforms. These were never, we didn't have these before you had the smartphone, which was in 2007. That was the first time that was created.
Okay.
And now, look at how much money is valued, the value of something like Facebook. It's, billions. I think they just said that Jeff Bezos now is one of the richest men in the world because of Amazon.
Yeah.
And it's an idea, it's an idea about how to, put people together with their products and provide all of these different things that we didn't have. I remember, Blockbuster Video. There was a Blockbuster Video on every corner.
Right.
More Blockbuster videos. You know why? Because of the internet. Because now you can get on Amazon, you can get on Netflix, and you can order up your movies right, to your computer.
And download them right there.
Download them right there. And those companies are worth a tremendous amount of money because they are protecting that. They're protecting all of that property through the intellectual property laws, patent, copyright, trademark, So it has
Wow,
tremendous.
that's something. So if you're just tuning in, I am speaking with attorney Lance Venable, and we're talking about the work that he does as an intellectual property attorney and why it's important to protect your intellectual property. I'm Rashida, and I am host here on Intellectual Chocolate. I encourage you to subscribe to intellectualchocolate.com to stay informed and to stay up to date on what we're doing. And for financial literacy and to learn how to grow your business today, we encourage you to go to the blackbusinessschool.com. So I know we talked about some of the tech stuff, and that's our hope that as a community, we would move more into that space. But what about the individuals who may not have an interest in that, or that may not be their skill set, but they have regular other businesses? How can protecting your intellectual property still help to grow and scale your business? Because I know when in our conversations that we were saying, a lot of this is going to help you grow and scale your business as well.
Yes. You know, your business doesn't have to be a tech business to benefit from intellectual property. I think we had mentioned in the pre-interview about one of the companies that I represent, Nothing Bundt Cakes. I don't know how I know that they are all throughout the country right now. That is a client of mine, and I tell the story that these were two ladies who just started in their kitchen making cakes for people and decided to open up a business. And they wanted to sell their cakes. They were based out of Las Vegas, and people started buying them. They liked them. And it's not technology related at all, but the brand, their idea, their trademark that they came up with for Nothing Bundt Cakes was something that was extremely valuable. And now that they are, you know, a business that is franchised from a kitchen in their home to, you know, I think it's almost 200 stores throughout the country. It's all, a lot of that is based on a couple of things. It's their recipes, which are extremely valuable to them, and I believe they protect them as trade secrets.
Yes, I'm glad that you mentioned that. The trade secrets, protecting recipes.
Yes. I mean, if you want other examples, the Colonel's 11 herbs and spices, no one knows how to make KFC, but you know, it's locked away in a vault somewhere. Same thing with the Coca-Cola formula. You know, that is an extremely valuable trade secret that allows Coke to be able to sell a product that, you know, not many people have been able to figure out how. In fact, I don't think anybody's been able to figure out how to make it. But they have, you know, the protection that they have for their property, for their recipes, their brand, Nothing Bundt Cakes. Also, the frosting pattern that they use on their cakes makes the cake easily identifiable. These are all things that if you are a business, if you are a small business, if you're a large business, but in particular, even a small business, these are things that you should, you know, call someone like me in order to protect, so that when you get the registrations for your trademarks, they will allow you to help build a brand without having to worry about other people using a similar brand and potentially taking business away from you.
Right.
And it could not only cost you money, but it will help build the value of your company, because if it's ever bought, one of the things that they will ask you is, well, what type of intellectual property protection do you have? So, I mean, and as a side note to that, I'm sure a lot of people have watched the show Shark Tank.
Yes.
You often see when these people come out with their ideas, Mark Cuban, one of the first things he asks them is, do you have a patent?
Right.
Do you have any proprietary rights in your invention or your trademark or anything like that? Because somebody who wants to invest in your company potentially doesn't want to have to compete. They don't want to have your product compete against a lot of people. If you have a proprietary right, such as a patent or a trademark, they don't have to worry about that. And that provides value.
It gives you, like you said yesterday, it gives you a monopoly.
Yes.
On your product.
Yes.
In addition to that, you can help make money because you can also license it.
Yes.
So there's multiple ways that you can make money. You're like duplicating yourself. Just
right.
like you said, these ladies are have a franchise now, but because they did all of that work up front, they're able to license it out, and they're making money, and they're at home chilling, and they're making money.
Right. Their franchise is based on their rights and their trademark. They give you the right to use their Nothing Bundt Cakes trademark, which hopefully has some reputation and value.
Right.
You open up that business, and they have a countrywide reputation. People will buy the products that are in that store because of that trademark. And like I said, the recipes, the frosting pattern, all those things are the reason why you can sit back at home and just say, here, you want my intellectual property? I will give it to you. You pay me for the rights to do that, and I don't have to go out and build anything.
Right. Now let me ask you, how did you guys come to the decision to trademark the frosting pattern? Like, how did that even come to be?
Well, because when you are using a trademark, the idea of a trademark is to identify the source.
Right.
Source identifier, the product or the service. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a name or a logo.
Okay.
But it can be anything, like remember the chimes, the NBC chimes, when you hear on TV, doon, 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 you know that's NBC, right?
Right.
So if there's something that's unique about a product that you sell, and in their case, they use this very specific type of frosting pattern. If you sell enough of those cakes and people start recognizing that particular frosting pattern, it then becomes associated with the company. So it is a trademark. It is part of the brand. And it's no different than when you see the Nike swoosh,
yes,
or the Adidas, the bars, when you see that, it causes you to go, oh, I know, oh, I've seen a cake like that.
You already know it.
You know it.
Right.
You know it. And
so did they come to the decision to do that based on your consultation, based on your help? Did you suggest that so that's the point that I was getting to.
Yes.
Contacting an intellectual property attorney, they can help work with you through all of these various details that none of us would even think about.
Right.
And so that's how those details is what help you grow and scale your business.
Yes. It's like what I can help you do is to help you find things you didn't even know were protectable.
Right.
And you may
consider things you never even imagined.
Never even considered, you never even imagined. And it's being able to protect that property that will allow you to potentially license it, make more money, provide more value to your company. If your company is ever sold or bought by someone else, they're going to say, oh, you mean if I buy your company, I have all these patents that I can license to third parties, or your trademarks are they're extremely valuable to your company. And I can also help you select the right type of trademark, because not all trademarks are good trademarks. You want to have unique trademarks. You want to have, I think I used the example with you yesterday, if you use the word apple and you're selling apples, that's not a good trademark, because no one is going to know that you're using the word apple to describe apple as a source identifier. But if you put the word apple on a phone, or the Apple symbol on a phone, suddenly it becomes an extremely valuable trademark, because it's an arbitrary use of the word apple on something that has nothing to do with the fruit or anything like that. So those are the types of things that I can help you with if you're a small business. And I think traditionally in our community, we haven't always been the best at looking at trying to protect these rights that, for many of us, we don't know about.
Right. Being aware. It's just the knowledge. It's not, a lot of times it's not there.
Right.
We never think about how all the details that went into brands that were built, the McDonald's, the Coca-Colas. We just take for granted that they've been there and never think about the details and the work that actually helped get them to that place.
That's right.
Because they could have just been flipping burgers in a restaurant and stayed isolated. But because they did all of these things and built their business and tied the brand and the protection with it, they're able to be around the world.
That is exactly right. That's exactly right.
Now, what I would ask you is what step, because I know when you're starting a new business, a lot of people are thinking, okay, the cost to starting a business, and there's various things that you would have to consider in terms of cost, depending on what type of business you're starting and the services and all of these different things. At what point should someone reach out to an intellectual property attorney?
Immediately. When you are starting a business, it should be, there's basically a couple of people that you want to call and you want to have as part of your startup when you begin your business. You have to get a good accountant to help you with your books, and your taxes, to help set up a structure for your taxes for your business. A corporate attorney that can help you set up the type of structure that you want to set up, like an LLC, a subchapter S corporation. Those people, those types of lawyers can help you determine what the best structure is.
Right.
And then someone like me who can then help you, if you want to like choose a trademark and develop a brand, and set up a structure before you get started. Because if you spend a lot of money on your business to get started and then you choose a brand that you did not know maybe was being used by some other company, and then you find that out 6, 8, 10 months down the line, it's either in the form of finding out that somebody else is using a very similar name to your name, which isn't good,
right,
or somebody else has owned a name or a logo longer than you have, and they send you a demand letter telling you to stop using the name, which is the worst possible situation, because now you've got to come to me and I've got to act as your litigation lawyer. I've got to help protect you in court because they may want you to stop using that name, and now you've got to spend, not only a significant amount of money in changing the name, but also, educating your customers that you're having to change the name. And you're not doing that. You're not doing. A lot of people change their brands, but it's usually on their own time.
Yes.
And it's usually for good reasons.
Right.
But if somebody came along and told you, like say John Amos had to deal with in Coming to America, people are out there snapping pictures out in front of his restaurant. If he had to shut his business down the next day because he was using the golden arcs instead of asking permission from McDonald's, that's devastating to a business. I've seen that firsthand. Represented several clients in my career from people who have not done it the right way.
And so is it that extreme? I mean, do they have the opportunity to just continue to function but take away any of the imaging or anything that's similar to this other company, or do they just have to close the doors?
Well, they have to change. Usually what happens is most situations allow a phase out period. They don't just say you have to stop this tomorrow. They'll usually give a few months. It also depends on how egregious the violation is. Obviously, if you started, if you tried to do what John Amos did, in real life,
right?
McDonald's isn't going to be so. They're not going to be so. They're going to want that to be shut down the next day, because they're going to say, how could you be so stupid to choose a brand for your business that is ours, and everybody knows that, and you knew that going into it. They would want
very intentional.
But a lot of times it's not intentional, and in those cases there usually is some cooperation with the attorney. I mean, if I were on the plaintiff side, I would be cooperative and give a phase out period. But
even when it is the case, when it is intentional, because when you have sometimes bigger brands, and they may see something creative or something that they can use, and they think that, oh, that brand is smaller, I can borrow or steal something from them, and they wouldn't know it. But to your point, if you protect your property at whatever stage your business is in the very beginning, now you have some protection. So now someone can go after even those big companies, which could work out in your favor, right?
Yes, one of the most famous trademark cases occurred back in the late 50s when Burger King was just starting out. There was a small Burger King business in Florida that was not the Burger King that we know today.
Right. And
that person ended up getting threatened by the real Burger King, but the person who had the business in Florida had the use of the trademark first. And so I believe he had the mark registered. I have to look back on the case, but he ended up being able to work out a deal with Burger King where he was able to control a certain area where he had been using the name for a while. He didn't have franchises. He just had like one restaurant.
Right.
But Burger King had grown in the time that he had started using the name, and basically having the rights superior to Burger King forced Burger King to have to come to him and work out a deal. And that's why it is extremely important that you protect these rights. Like I said, I can tell you, in my 23 years of practicing, the worst thing I have to deal with is watching somebody come into my office and say, "I wish I had talked to you before I started my business because I wouldn't have chosen this name." And it's unfortunate, but it happens, and you have to deal with it. So.
Yeah. So if you're just tuning in, I am speaking with attorney Lance Venable. He is an intellectual property attorney. I'm Rashida here with you from Intellectual Chocolate. And I want you to make sure you subscribe to the Intellectual Chocolate website, intellectualchocolate.com. And we have intelligent conversations with brilliant Black minds on this podcast. And for financial literacy and to learn how to grow your business today, I want you to check out the Black Business School. And also, this is an important conversation that we're having. Attorney Lance is sharing some very important information on the formation of your business. And this is a very pivotal, this is an important step in the inception of your business. We don't want you to put this at the end. We want you to put this at the beginning. So what I want you to do is to give some likes and some shares. Share this video so that other people in our community are being made aware, because just like we talked about with the Burger King situation, just because it's a big business that trademark protected them, and this big corporation had to come and heal. They had to come and work out a deal with this smaller company, and probably help this company in ways that they probably never would have ever scaled to. And I think that those things are important, and I think that you have definitely stressed that point.
And I can tell you, even from my own personal experience, because I know one thing we didn't really talk about, we kind of veered off it, but I'm an entrepreneur myself by accident.
Okay.
When I was in law school, I thought I was going to go before I started, before I graduated, that I was going to go work for a gentleman who had hired me as a clerk when I was in law school. And 3 months before I was ready to graduate law school, he decided to move his practice and merge it with a larger company, a larger firm. And he couldn't bring me and another gentleman who I was working with, who also went to law school with me here at ASU, along with him. And 3 months before I was ready to graduate, I had no job. And my friend and I were working together on this. We said, well, maybe we ought to just start our own firm.
And I want to pause there, and I want to emphasize, you didn't have a job because the time that you spent working as a clerk for him and believing that you would be working for him, you would have been interviewing in your final semester with law firms to get a job.
Yes, this was March of 1995, and the economy was still not really good for lawyers. And unfortunately, with 2 months to go before I was ready to graduate, while all my friends had spent time during the fall semester and early spring semester interviewing, getting jobs at firms, doing everything that they needed to, I just always assumed that that's where I was going to end up and going back to work.
Right.
I thought about actually going to work for Motorola, which is where I was working before I went to law school.
With your engineering degree.
With my engineering degree, but also as a corporate attorney doing patent law at Motorola. But they had phased that department out, so I couldn't even go back there. Wow. And so we were left with like, well, now what do we do? We have student loan debt. We'll have a law degree in 2 months. But that and $4 will buy you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. It just we didn't have clients, we didn't have a job. What would we do? And we said, well, let's start our own firm. And we had literally no experience starting a business. All we had was our degrees and our knowledge. And luckily for us, I think our naivete actually helped us, because we did at the time, we sought out people who knew more than we did about this, and they helped give us some guidance. They helped us put a business plan together. In fact, a couple of very prominent black businessmen here in Phoenix actually helped us through that, and it was very good. They helped us, put the plan together. We went and talked to several banks. They all said, no, we're not going to do this. There's just no way. And one gentleman, his name is Tim Brunner. He worked at a very large bank here in Phoenix. He decided to take a chance on us, and he gave us a seed loan. And we used that money to put out a shingle, rent an office space, put up a website in a time when there really was no other attorneys using websites. And we suffered for a long time. We had no clients, but the website actually helped direct some traffic. Yellow Pages ads at the time, before you had Google, kind of directed some business our way. And then over the course of 2 to 3 years, when that seed money had basically gone next to zero, and all of our friends were making great money, we weren't making great money, the firm took off. And it was very helpful that we had talked to people who knew about stuff that I'm talking about right now, helping.
Right, to help you.
And it allowed us to build that firm into a firm that until 4 years ago, where I was at, I've left since then and gone on my own. We built it up to a law firm that had 8 lawyers, had over 1,700 clients, business, did a substantial amount in billings, and actually at one point I think we were the second largest pure intellectual property firm in the state of Arizona. So it was a great success story that over the course of 20 years that we had built up this firm from nothing. But a lot of that actually stemmed from the fact that we were in an area that there's not a lot of lawyers who do what we do. And,
right.
And in my case, I think I was the first black patent attorney in the state of Arizona to do this work, because there's just so few of us in the country. I know there's a lot more now. There certainly were none back then. Very few.
Right.
And so it helped, and I was really proud of the fact that we did not we had experience. Mm-hmm. But we didn't have a book of business, and we started out with literally nothing and built it into something. And my experience in those 23 years now can help other people, just like those gentlemen who helped me back when we got started. And I want to do that. Like, I want to help people in our community, become entrepreneurs, go into tech fields, because it's just a huge opportunity for people who have these types of backgrounds to, in engineering and science. And certainly there just aren't enough of us. Like I think even today you walk into many engineering firms and even, law firms, there's not a lot of people who look like us there still.
And then I know one of the things that you mentioned is one of the things that attracted you to this platform is following Dr. Boyce Watkins and his message about needing more businesses in the Black community and how dire that is. And for more of us to really understand how important it is for us to do that, because our livelihood, our survival as a people is all predicated upon that. And that resonates with you, and that's one of the reasons why you're here today. Right.
My goal is twofold. One is to those who already have small businesses in our community to try to use services like I offer to protect their intellectual property that they may not know about. And the second thing is to hopefully inspire other people in our community to become entrepreneurs, and in particular go into fields like I did with science, technology, and maybe even the law.
The law.
I know. Yes. It's not that there's a lot of us who are lawyers, but there's very few of us who actually do the type of practice that involves protecting intellectual property, and it's a great field. And I'm willing to help and try to do whatever I can to empower more people to do something like that.
Okay. Now I have this one final question.
Yes.
You are an intellectual property attorney.
Yes.
So you're unique in the fact that you are a federal
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, so the law that I practice, in fact, for patent law, you actually have to pass a separate bar exam to become a patent attorney, because they won't even let you sit for the bar unless you have an engineering or science degree. So you can't become a patent lawyer unless you have that. But the law that we use for patents and trademarks and copyrights, it's all federal law, and the federal law is, because it's federal law, I can help people anywhere in the country.
Right.
I'm registered to practice in the state of Arizona, but I have any filings for trademark applications, patent applications. I can do that in fact, I can do that literally for anybody in the world. They contact me, the filings are all done, the preparation is all done, for filings with the Patent and Trademark Office. That's all federal based, and you don't have to just simply call somebody who's local to you. If you wanted to hire me to do it, I can help you. And it's also the same for litigation too. I mean, I'm not licensed to practice outside of the state of Arizona. I'm actually licensed in a couple of other places, but if somebody ever gets sued for patent, trademark, copyright infringement, I can still represent them even though I'm in the state of Arizona. So it's a very good practice to be in, because it's not local. You can do this.
Yes. And in an effort to support another Black business, which is another thing that we have to continuously do, and also to work with someone who understands your struggles, who understands how starting a business and like you said, and many times being the only Black person in the room, and all of these various things, you can relate to that. You understand that, the things that our community may not know, and so you will take the time to help and explain. So somebody who's just relatable, I would just encourage individuals to reach out to you. And if they wanted to, how would they do that?
Well, they can reach me several ways. You can call me directly. My office number is 602-730-1422. I have a website for my firm. It's the Law Office of Lance C. Venable. It is located at www.venableiplaw.com. That's my last name, V like in Victor, ENABLE, and it's P as in Paul, LAW.com. And you can also reach me through my email. I have my email address is my name, Lance, at venableiplaw.com, and I have a Twitter account, Lance2367, I believe, is my Twitter account. But I don't really use that so much for my business. That's more my personal Twitter. But usually either through phone, through email, my website. And then once you go to my website, I have a lot of information about intellectual property law that you can read about. You can also read about what other clients have said about me. I have a whole section on references. You can read about other types of cases that I've worked on. There's links to other things that can help you if you're looking to start up your business. But basically, that's how you can reach out to me, and I'd be happy to talk to you. I encourage anyone who wants to start a business to, like I said, make me one of the first phone calls that you make, or someone like me. Doesn't necessarily have to be me.
Right.
But it's extremely important. We just, as a community, we don't take advantage of this type of these types of protections under the law that will help build wealth. And there's a difference between, I think we talked about this yesterday, there's a difference between being rich and being wealthy. Wealthy, you own things. You actually have assets that can produce money for you, that can actually build the amount of money that you have. Whereas just having money and spending it haphazardly, you may be rich, but you're not investing in the type of things that you need to be doing, especially if you own a business. And that's why you want to protect yourself, using the type of law and protections that you have under the law that I practice.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Attorney Lance, for coming on and sharing with us. And to the audience, we thank you for viewing. And again, share this video. Please get this out. And if, you know, we're here, this is Intellectual Chocolate Podcast, and we invite you to subscribe. But not only do we want you to subscribe, we here have intelligent conversations with brilliant Black minds. And if you have something intelligent to say, or if you know someone else who has something intelligent to say, we invite you to sign up, intellectualchocolate.com. And if you want to follow me, you can just go to my website, ltaishow.com, and you can get in contact with me there. So again, we thank you for viewing. Again, Lance, thank you for being on, and it's been great.
Thank you, Rashida. It's been my pleasure.
Okay. Bye-bye.